Well, g'day everybody and welcome to one of Fergy's how-to classes. So on this clip today, we're going to cover Westernport and where to find snapper. Everybody loves catching snapper in Westernport. So what I've got, guys, I've got the a map of Westernport, which you can see on your screen there. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to work you around this map of Westernport and explain to you where and when to find snapper. So let's kick off, eh? So as you know, we've got the whole map of Westernport, which is a pretty big, decent waterway, and the beauty of Westernport, it's always got somewhere to hide. Now this session's probably going to go for about 15 minutes, so maybe grab a beer, a notepad, sit down, and let's go through it. So let's start with the top end of Westernport. The top end of Westernport to me is what I classify as sort of from Crawfish Rock right through up into the top end, up into Lang Lang there. So all those little feeder channels. So let's have a look at the map here. So if we go right to the top extremities here, let's go up in there, Bolton's Channel, pretty famous. So Bolton's Channel here, as you can see there, the last channel down on the French Island side. There is another channel that runs in back here. Just be aware that a fair bit of that channel is a marine park, so try and stay out of that. There's only a small bit that you can fish in there. But Bolton's and Boycher are the two channels that run side by side here, and they're both very, very popular channels. So snapper, early season, it's a bit warmer up there and there's a lot more nutrients up there, and that's where you'll find a lot of snapper early. And early, I'm talking September. So if I'm looking for snapper September and October, I'll be quite often up in here in this Bolton's Channel and Boycher Channel right next to it. And don't be too worried about, oh, I've got to sound heaps of fish and anchor on that fish and they haven't bitten in 5 minutes or 15 minutes, I'm going to move. Go in there, those fish are grazing up and down on those channel edges. So get in there, find a channel edge that's got some bait in it and some fish activity, you're marking a couple of arches, anchor up there and fish the tide there. So Bolton's Channel, famous. Boycher Channel next to it, fishes just as well, some days better. What'll happen on the high tide is the fish will graze up over these mud flats chasing all the crabs, and then as the tide starts to drop, they'll just drop back into the nearest channel. So that could be they were in Bolton's on the last tide, this tide they're over in Boycher, so they move around a fair bit. And you'll catch them up there in the shallow as 1.5, 2 metres of water even. Then you come over to Lyle's Channel here, the next one's over. Lyle's Channel, very, very good fishing in there. The only problem with probably Lyle's, all these top end channels, the hardest thing about fishing them, if there's any breeze. What happens is, because there's very little tide current up in there, if you've got a bit of a northerly breeze, for example, and you're trying to fish in Lyle's on a flood tide, the breeze will just push you around and spin you over your anchor. So that's probably the hardest thing about these top end channels. But the average depth is only about 6 metres and the fish absolutely love it up in here. Some very, very good snapper get caught up in here early season. So if we're looking for fish September, October, Bolton's, Boycher's, Lyle's, get up in these. Coming back further down, we come back down to Joe's Island. Joe's Island is pretty much famous for everything, but famous for snapper. That whole back end of Joe's, between Joe's and the start of Bolton's there, that's an average of about 5 to 6 metres of water, and it's a real grazing area. And as the tide floods in and out through there, those fish are swimming up and down through there in quite large schools, and you can literally just pick a spot, get a little bit of burley going if you want a few pilly cubes, because there you can burley, it's not too much current, and get up in there and just sit there and graze. Those fish will graze around you, so it's very productive. But Joe's itself, right around Joe's, has lots of snapper and gummy sharks. So whether you're fishing on the north side of Joe's in sort of 8 to 15 metres of water, or on the south side, it all fishes exceptionally well. So that's very, very productive area. So right around the whole Joe's, just sound around till you mark some fish and then drop the anchor down and sit and wait and have some good fresh baits out there. Check those baits every 10 or 15 minutes. If we go north of Joe's, so back over towards Tooradin Channel there, that bank that runs along here from Tooradin Channel up to Lyle's Channel is known as Brown's Reserve. Very, very good fishing area, particularly in that sort of October and November. Once again, the fish are just grazing up and down through there, so a lot of fish swim along there, a lot of good snapper get caught there. Tooradin Channel. A lot of people don't ever think of Tooradin Channel for snapper, but a lot of good snapper are caught in Tooradin Channel. So have a bit of a look in there. It's quite a productive area. Crawfish Rock. Old Crawfish Rock, that is actually where I caught my first ever legal snapper about 20 years ago, I guess now. I got my first legal snapper there, right in the front of Crawfish Rock in about 20 metres of water, and it was a 4.5 kilo fish. That's what started my snapper addiction. So Crawfish Rock is a little bit tough to fish mid-tide because it does flow pretty hard through there. So fishing there in around those tide changes, that last hour of either side of the tide change, can be quite productive. You get a lot of gummies there too, a lot of nice gummies there, but a lot of snapper are caught there. And October-ish, November, a lot of good snapper around Crawfish Rock. Then we'll move back a little bit further and we're coming back across to Eagle Rock. Now, so you got your Warneet channel that runs in there, comes out just in front of Crawfish Rock. And then coming back from that, you've got Eagle Rock. Eagle Rock is a phenomenal landmark. On the north side of Eagle Rock, the water depth will vary between sort of 6 and 10 metres, but it's probably about 8 metres on average because you got quail bank there, beautiful squid and whiting, and then it drops off in that sort of 6 to 8 metres out there to Eagle Rock. The amount of fish that swim through there, it is just a highway. So you can literally just go and drop your anchor and spend a whole tide there waiting for the fish to swim past you. You haven't got to be off chasing them. Just go and plonk and actually intercept those fish. On the south side of Eagle Rock, it gets a lot deeper. It sort of goes out to about 22 metres on that side, and a lot of fish are caught there. You just got to find where the fish are on the day. If you're marking the fish in 12 metres of water, 15, 18, 20, depends where they are, and particularly on those smaller tides where it allows you to drop into the deeper water, you'll get a lot of nice fish there. So that is the top end of Westernport. That's a sort of a 5-minute overview on the top end, and I hope that gives you some starting points. Next up, we're going to cover the North Arm. Well, everybody, I hope you picked up a few bits and pieces out of the top end of Westernport. Let's move on to the North Arm. So the North Arm pretty much runs from Eagle Rock right down to Stony Point. And it's called the North Arm pretty simply because it runs north. So that's pretty straightforward there. So North Arm, you've got the shipping channel through the middle there. Always remember you cannot anchor in the shipping channel. That is illegal and you will get fines for it. You can drift fish it, but you don't need to. There's plenty of other areas to fish. So if we start from Eagle Rock and we move our way down from Eagle Rock, on the southeastern side of Eagle Rock there, you've got Middle Spit, which is famous for King George whiting, obviously. But a lot of good snapper fishing is done down along the edge of that bank there, where Middle Spit drops off back into sort of that 6, 8 to 10 metres. That's what we call the long reef. There's a reef that pretty much runs from out the front of Stony all the way up to Crawfish Rock there. And that is what we call the long reef. And it's all rubbly hard bottom, and it will vary in depth from sort of 8 metres through to about 12 to 14 metres. But most of it average probably 10 metres deep. Beautiful fishing grounds. Not only is it full of snapper, but you'll catch plenty of King George whiting there while you're waiting for a snapper bite. And once again, that's a bit of like a highway. The fish will graze up and down on that. And all we're doing predominantly there when I'm fishing that area, I'm driving around looking at my sounder, looking at where I'm finding fish. And if I'm marking fish that day in 8 metres of water consistently, I'll fish 8 metres. If I'm marking the fish out in 10 or 12 metres, I'll fish in that 10 or 12 metres, and that's a bit of a highway. The fish will just graze up and down on that depth. That's where the bait or the crabs are, whatever they're eating, and they're grazing up and down. So just look where you find consistently finding marks. If you're marking snapper here and there, then go and fit on that. Okay, sorry, back, just had to fix the microphone. So we've got down on the that whole area there running along the side of Middle Spit in that sort of 8 to 12 metres, beautiful snapper grounds. Over as you get closer to the channel markers there, you're sort of in about that sort of 14 to 16 metres deep, from buoy 35 right down to say buoy 27, all the way down along the edge of the shipping channel there is beautiful ground. Once again, I'm just looking for snapper, but buoy 29, buoy 31, very famous snap. The old tea tree competition that ran for many years, probably say out of 10 years, Westernport probably won it 8 years, and probably 6 of those 8 years, the winning fish was caught along that area, along through there. It's a very productive area. But so buoy 35 is right up at the top here, opposite Kaya Bank. From there, right down along that whole shipping channel holds a lot of snapper. It's a very productive area. Don't discount though the Hastings side of the channel. When you get over like Buoy 28, Buoy 30, closer on the western bank there, not a lot of people fish those areas. And what actually happens in that area, when you've got westerly winds, you've got a lot less wind in there. You're protected as you're closer into Lysarts, etc. So make sure you're outside the shipping channel, but don't be afraid to look over there. You might see 40 boats anchored up on Buoy 31 area and they're all packed in like sardines. Get away from the crowd. Go on the other side of the channel, because if the fish are in that area, they'll also be on the other side of the channel too. Get over there, try and get out there on your own, and that's going to increase your chance of actually catching a big snapper. So that whole area at the front of Hastings, from Buoy 28, Buoy 30, etc., Buoy 26, all down in that western bank. Have a good look in there. Plenty of snapper on that side. Remember, there's a lot of piers on that side, so there's a lot of structure. What does structure hold? Holds the yakkers and the slimies, etc. And you know what? Those snapper go in there and feed very hard. So have a good look at that there. So the North Arm there. Now, the one that sort of gets overlooked a little bit is a middle channel, or the eastern channel, whatever you want to call it, which is a channel that runs from Eagle Rock right down to Tankerton, down running in tight on French Island. A lot of people only fish it for whiting. I tell you, there's good snapper down in there. A lot of snapper in there because there's a lot of food. So the snapper are coming in there. Go and have a look in there, and you might be the only 1 or 2 boats in there chasing snapper, and that's where you'll get yourself a bloody nice fish away from the crowd. So have a good look in there. So that's your North Arm covered. Hopefully that picked up a few hints out of that. Okay, so as you get to the bottom of the North Arm and you get down to Tortoise Head area there, so you got Buoy 17 right at the bottom there, just straight out from Tankerton. That has been a famous early snapper point for as long as I can remember. So don't discount it. Buoy early season, so late September into October and that. Down the bottom of the eastern channel here, where the North Arm comes right down to the bottom, that's where you got Buoy 17. Fair bit of current in there, but there's some really good snapper grounds there. Go and have a good look there. You'll catch snapper, you'll get whiting, you'll get gummies, everything at the same time. But Buoy 17, very, very good area for snapper. And now let's move along the front of Phillip Island. So that's the map there of the bottom of the Phillip Island. So what we're going to look at there is right across the front of there. So from Tortoise Head Bank, right along here, right up to Elizabeth Island. We'll get to there in a moment. But out the front of Cowes, you got quite deep water there, averaging about 16 metres deep. That is where the snapper pretty much go when the water temperature is really high. So when you get late in the season, so first week or 2 of December, late last week of November, and the snapper, you're starting to find them harder to find in the other areas. Go and have a good look along the front of Rill. You'll know you're in the right area because quite often there'll be 20 boats along there. But straight out the front of Cowes, Rill, right along the front of Newhaven there, in about that 14 to 16 metres, you will find a lot of snapper, you'll find a lot of boats, and everyone's catching snapper. That's where they are late season. That is sort of where they hold up. It's a bit deeper water, it's probably a bit cooler. They hold up in there and then sort of before they depart the port. So that's quite a good spot to go and have a look for snapper in December. Okay, let's move across here. At the front of San Remo up into Corinella, Coronet Bay. This area here, we call that the Corals. It's quite shallow. It's only averaging sort of 4.5 to 5 metres deep. It's a muddy bottom. It's full of shell, and there is quite a bit of coral in that area. That's why they call it the Corals. And the fish love to graze in there. Quite often when you catch your fish, then you're cleaning, they'll be full of almost like just black silt because they're chasing little crabs and shellfish or whatever out of that corally area. It's a very productive area, particularly in late October, early November. The fish get up in there, particularly at night, and they will just graze around in there. So you don't have to be very particular. In 4 metres of water, you're not going to sound a lot of fish, just the angle of your beam's going to be a bit tight. But get up into that area there and just anchor up and wait for the fish to graze. They do, they graze around. A few pellets or a few cubes of pilchard, very productive in that area because there isn't a lot of current, and bring those fish to you. But don't burley too hard or you're going to get inundated with flatfish and all sorts of rubbish. But a lot of fish in there. Like we've caught snapper there right up in close to Coronet Bay in sort of 3 to 4 metres of water. A lot of fish get caught there, particularly the kayak guys. It's a little bit of a secret spot for the kayakers. They'll get up there in 3 or 4 metres of water. So be very careful, particularly at night, that you don't run one of these kayakers over. But that whole area there called the corals, absolutely brilliant fishing. Coming off the corals there, you've got Elizabeth Island on the bottom of French Island. Right along Elizabeth Island is famous for snapper, right around it. And the good thing about Elizabeth Island, when you're fishing there, it's actually, you're in the deeper area, you might be between 6 and 12, 14 metres of water. There's quite good current, and it's a bit of a highway once again. All the fish will just graze as they're going up into Corinella and that, they're swimming past there. And you get a lot of really good snapper there. And you know what? If you're ever going to fluke and catch a nice mulloway when you're snapper fishing, that's one of the spots you're probably going to catch one as well. So Elizabeth Island, running along the front of Elizabeth Island here, as you start to head up into Corinella, very, very productive. You got a channel that runs on, tucked in the back of French Island here, called Mozzie Channel. It's known as the Mosquito Channel. You will want to take some mosquito repellent because you will get eaten on the wrong day. But up in there, very good early season for snapper. Then Settlement Point, all the way along here. You have got the old famous Snapper Rock right at the front of Corinella. I personally don't fish it. It's very turbulent water. It's very deep. It's very fast. But it's known as Snapper Rock because there's a lot of snapper around there. The snapper will get right around it. Have a bit of a look there, okay? So that sort of covers along the front of Cowes, Rill, up into the corals, and along here into Elizabeth Island up here. Brilliant area. I hope you picked up some spots there. Okay, let's move up into the famous Corinella area. Very, very good spot for snapper, full stop. You look at it and you go, man, that water looks filthy. It looks like milk coffee most of the time. Keep in mind though, that's normally only the top metre or so of the water that looks like that. Down the bottom is actually quite clean, but I'll tell you what, the snapper absolutely love it. Particularly early season, a bit like going up into Boltons and Boycha, like I said at the start. You've got some very shallow mud banks up in here that are very high in nutrients, and early season there is a bit warmer water, and the snapper do love to get up into there. So from the front of Corinella here, you got this big deep channel that runs right up along the, up here, right up into Spit Point. Very productive. There's snapper right along here. Some days you'll catch them up here in Freeman Point. Blue Gum Point is another great spot. But a lot of people also along this bank here. So on the Settlement Point, back on the Corinella side, the bank here, very productive. And as the tide progresses and gets later in the flood tide, these areas here are very, very good right up into here. And the last little bit in that area, up into here. They call these the fingers. See how they are? Look like a set of fingers. Pretty shallow water up in there. A lot of those channels might only be 3 to 4 metres deep. But man, some nice snapper come out of those channels. And that's sort of the top of the flood of the tide and about the first half of the run out tide. When it's high tide, the fish, they'll get right up into this green stuff, right up in this mud where you think you won't even go in your boat. The snapper will get right up in there. So when they go into there, they'll come up through these channels and they'll come up into all these little fingers to fan out and go across the mud here, looking for crabs and little bait fish, etc. So don't be afraid to get up into some of these channels, particularly if you're fishing night, on a flood tide in the night. Get up into some of these little fingers, very shallow. You might only be anchoring in 3 metres of water, but I'll tell you what, you'll catch some bloody nice snapper up in there, including 20 pounders in really shallow water. So all these little fingers up in the top of Corinella here, all hold snapper. So there you go. That's a quick overview of snapper fishing in Westernport. Breaking it down from the top end, right around, down through the North Arm, across Cowes, the Corals, up through Elizabeth Island, and up into Corinella at different stages of the season. I can only condense so much information into one of these videos. All you got to do is get out there and try your best and have a go. Hours on the water will catch your fish. So I hope that's helped everybody. Thanks for watching.